Sherlock Holmes wasn't real, but the London of his adventures often was. And if you follow the clues in his stories, you can still find hints of it everywhere. So, in anticipation of Moriarty on Audible, here's a walking tour of his nemesis London, a study in Sherlock, if you will. So strap on your comfiest pair of sneakers, because we'll be visiting 17 locations in 3.5 hours. Oh yeah, you'll definitely get your 10,000 steps in, that's for sure. There's no other place to start a Sherlock Holmes tour than at 221B Baker Street. The iconic home base of Holmes and Watson was introduced in the detective's first tale and remained throughout the series. It's now home to the Sherlock Holmes Museum, where you can actually tour a replica of that flat. Mrs. Hudson not included, of course. But back in Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's day, this actually wasn't where 221B Baker Street was located at all. The street has been renumbered since then. The original 221B is the present-day 31 Baker Street. Head 10 minutes down Baker Street and you'll find 31 Baker Street, which Sir Arthur Conan Doyle revealed to be his actual inspiration for their abode. Unfortunately, 31 is under construction, but hey, one day you might actually live in it. 14 minutes west, there's a spot frequented by Irene Adler, the woman of the franchise. She may only be in a few Holmes stories, but hey, she's certainly memorable, isn't she? Like when Holmes was a reluctant witness at her wedding to a barrister at the Church of St Monica on Edgware Road.
I was half dragged up to the altar, and before I knew where I was, I found myself mumbling responses which were whispered in my ear and vouching for things of which I knew nothing, and generally assisting in the secure tying up of Irina Adler, spinster, to Godfrey Norton, bachelor.
Now, the church didn't exist. There is, however, a Church of St Mark's almost exactly at that location. Sleuths think Doyle used it as a model. Next, we'll turn 10 minutes southwest towards Paddington train station. The bustling station is mentioned a full 5 times over the saga. Perhaps most importantly, it seems to be the first place we see Holmes in his trademark hat.
Sherlock Holmes was pacing up and down the platform, his tall, gaunt figure made even gaunter and taller by his long grey travelling cloak and close-fitting cloth cap.
Next, to get a little greenery, we're going to head 20 minutes south through Hyde Park to the Speaker's Corner. This traditional space for public debate during the 1800s also saw Watson attempt to emulate Holmes's detective work. And fail at it. We can't all be consulting detectives. Head east down Oxford Street for 15 minutes, then up a block you'll find a place where mischief was afoot. Sure, it looks quaint now, it really does, but this was where a falling brick shattered at Sherlock's feet, alerting him to Moriarty's plot against him. On to Bond Street now. Sherlock knew where to live the high life in London for sure. Bond Street of the era, you see, was home to high-end art dealers and galleries. In The Hound of the Baskervilles, Holmes suggests killing time there by dropping into Bond Street picture galleries. Take a left on Brook Street and find Claridge's. I know we've done about 6 kilometres so far, but please do stay with me and stay hydrated. Claridge's Hotel has one particularly cool feature besides, being a luxury hotel in operation since 1856. Holmes and Watson actually stayed in it. No word whether they had adjoining rooms, however, but we're going to say yes. About 7 minutes away is Conduit Street, home to Colonel Moran, a dangerous associate of Professor Moriarty who served in the British military. Holmes fans think his flat was between St George Street and Savile Row. Perhaps he was well dressed, even if despicable. Okay, so another 30 minutes south now and we'll reach the western edge of Pall Mall, which is notable for 2 things. First, it's theorised that it's the location of the Diogenese Club, a fictional gentlemen's club co-founded by Mycroft Holmes. Back in the day, clubs like these were where men could read, dine, play cards, and even spend the night. Secondly, we know that Mycroft Holmes was so obsessed with the Diogenese Club that he lived opposite it. So this is a pretty big stop for any Mycroft fans out there. There's been some speculation that the real Reform Club might be Doyle's inspiration for Diogenes, but it hasn't been confirmed. Next, let's walk to 4 Whitehall Place, 9 minutes away. Until 1890, the original Metropolitan Police Headquarters stood here, but its back entrance was on Great Scotland Yard, which is where the term Scotland Yard came from. Because of the need for more space, construction began in 1887 on a new set of buildings, a little further south, so Sherlock's Scotland Yard is now actually obsolete. Weirdly enough though, during the construction of the new police headquarters, they stumbled upon a woman's severed torso. The crime has never been solved, so why not do some sleuthing while we walk? 10 minutes down the bustling Strand, you'll find a few more important pieces of the Sherlock puzzle. For one, the magazine that published Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's stories, The Strand, was headquartered on Southampton Street. It's now a bunch of shops. And if you needed a place to read your copy of The Strand, well, you could hop right over to our next stop, only 2 minutes away. Holmes and Watson dined at Simpson's in the Strand on several occasions throughout the series. First built as a chess club in 1828, it switched over to fine dining. We even know a little bit about what the pair may have eaten, since their 1970 menu survives. Thick turtle soup, perhaps? Head just a few blocks northwest on Wellington, and you'll reach the Royal Opera House, a favourite after mystery treat for our favourite detective. Most of the Opera House's features are from a 1990s renovation, but the facade, foyer and auditorium remain the same as they would have been in the 1850s, just as Sherlock would have seen them. We're going to walk 20 minutes northeast now, but we promise it's definitely worth it to see one of the most famous institutions in Sherlock Holmes history, St. Bartholomew's Teaching Hospital. The hospital was founded in 1123, 769 years before the first Sherlock story was ever published. Not only is it Watson's alma mater, and where Holmes and Watson finally meet in a study in Scarlet, and where Holmes conducts his lab work.
A fellow who is working at the chemical laboratory up at the hospital. He was bemoaning himself this morning because he could not get someone to go halves with him in some nice rooms which he had found, and which were too much for his purse.
But in some stories, it's also the place where the final fight scene with Moriarty takes place. And you hadn't forgotten about him now, had you? If your feet are beginning to get a little bit tired, do feel free to hop on a short 20-minute ride on the number 8 bus towards Tottenham Court Road to our next destination. According to 1893's Adventure of the Musgrave Ritual, Sherlock's first London home was on Montague Street, right around the corner from the British Museum, presumably for easy access to its reading rooms. It's interesting to note here that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle actually resided here as well, at 23 Montague Street, 2 years before the story was published. Oh yeah, we're seeing connections. And speaking of our author, what better way to finish our Holmes tour than by paying our respects to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle? 28 minutes west, close to where we started on Baker Street, is 2 Upper Wimpole Street, where for several months as a young man, Doyle practiced ophthalmology. Thankfully, a lack of patience gave him time to write. A plaque marks the spot, and also, unfortunately, the end of our time together. So concludes our walking tour of Sherlock Holmes' London. I truly hope you've enjoyed it. But if you want to know Professor Moriarty and his much darker London, well, you'll need to tune into the Audible original series, which is available now.